Hello, all. I am Rishabh, and I welcome you back to the second part of our previous episode, The Habitat. In the previous episode, we saw why we conceived this pond, which we also called Chota Talao, and why we planted the qualitative lotus here. If you've not watched that episode, you can click here and get to know more about the benefits of the pond and how it helps biodiversity. In today's episode, we are going to see some videos which we have shot in the past throughout the year, and we're going to show you some of the many fauna which has visited this talao and made it their home. In any water body, one of the most interesting creatures are the ones which cannot live without the water, yet enjoy their ability to be outside the water, not very far from it. These are the amphibians like the toads, the frogs, and insects such as the dragonfly or the damselfly. The common thing between them is that they are attracted to the pond during their respective copulating and parenting period. The males have to woo the females with their flamboyant physical attributes and their ability to mark a territory and to guard it. It is very important for the couples to save their offsprings from any form of danger. Hence, we are going to look at the footage of these amphibians first. The footage which we're going to look at right now is that of the soft-shelled turtles. If you look at the footage, it's amazing how these creatures are sort of coming out and basking in the sun. The most interesting fact is the long snout it has and the tube-like nostrils. This actually helps them snorkel really easily while they are in shallow waters. They bury themselves in the mud on the shore or in the water with their heads stuck out to catch their prey that could be fishes or insects. In another footage, that of the soft-shell turtle, we could see it is trying to get hold of the dried seed pods of the lotus for the seeds to feed on. Heading towards some interesting folks over here who wake up from their so-called hibernation in early spring and start looking out for wetter areas and ponds for their breeding. They're looking for a pool to find mates. We might get confused between toads and frogs quite often, but there are some distinguishing points, and here are a few. Toads, if you see, have a very dry and a rocky skin, whereas frogs have a very glowy, shiny skin. That's because they like being near water body and they keep themselves wet and moist always. The toads, on the other hand, you'll see them, in pavements and on grass in the garden, and they can be pretty much away from the water. The limbs of the toad are shorter than their body, and the frogs, on the other hand, have longer legs. They prefer hopping often, and they look very agile and athletic, also because of the longer nose and the narrow jaw. Whereas the toads, you will see them, prefer crawling most of the time, and they're very squatty and have a very broad nose. You can see in this video, they're called to look for partners and they're showing their strength to their opponent males since they're very territorial. Toads have a defense mechanism. They puff their body in order to look inedible towards predators. Speaking of which, we have this very interesting footage of a striped keelback, which is a water snake, feasting on a toad. You can see how the toad has puffed itself by making it difficult for the snake to gulp him down. But slowly, with perseverance, the snake was able to eventually gulp it down. We also got lucky to get some mating footage of the toads. Um, just an interesting have to be taken care of by and fertilized by the males. She lays the eggs under the leaves of aquatic plants, like in our very own lotus in this case. Here we've got lucky to film some small toads who have just come out of their shell and exploring the big world around. We've recorded some types of frogs here, mostly skittering frogs and bullfrogs. However, bullfrogs are type of toads. It is actually called a bullfrog because it looks heavy and wide for its species, and it eats pretty much everything. Various types of insects, invertebrates, mice, young frogs, worms. They could eat juvenile snakes and even small birds at times. They mostly live in solidarity and are nocturnal. Also, they are frogs which are used in medical colleges for students to dissect and learn anatomy. Skittering frogs, on the other hand, are in the video, they're trying to skittering its territory. It's not making any noise, but you see it's sensing and sending some sort of soft signals around. They're called skittering because if they sense any unwanted presence or are scared, they quickly glide onto the water to a safe place. Hence, they skitter. Moving ahead to flies, they are very interesting creatures. Let me quickly tell you the difference between them as you can see two flies on the screen. The dragonflies are thicker and shorter, and while resting, they have their wings open, whereas the damselflies are slender and long, and while resting, they have their wings closed. Dragonflies have their wings which are broader at the base, and their front and the back wings are unequal in shape and size, and their eyes are really big and very close to each other. Whereas the damselflies, both front and back wings are of the same size and shape, and they are narrow at the base. And their eyes are too big too, but they're far from each other, unlike the dragonflies. The dragonflies lay their egg and fertilize them very slowly. In some cases and species, they lay them there even for years, whereas the damselflies lay their eggs on the blade of a plant submerged into the water. Some similarities which they've got, firstly, they are predatory and they feed on aerial insects like mosquitoes, midgets, and other small big flies. They also eat their types too. You can often see them flying together in pairs. Another interesting fact about them, in their similarities, is the mating behavior. The male clasps the female with the tip of his abdomen and behind her head. They release their sperm at a specific position of his abdomen. The female curls her abdomen to reach out to this part of the male's counterpart to collect it. This formation is also called the heart or the wheel. Their life cycles are the same, that their eggs fertilize to larva and skip the pupa stage and strengthen their physical attributes to be competent enough to survive in the external world. Before proceeding towards our last section, which is that of the birds, we would like to show you this small footage of how we bred fishes in the Chota Talao. What you can see are these juvenile mirels, called as marl in the local language. Here comes the showstoppers, the aquatic birds. This is a white-breasted waterhen who is looking for food, that is insects, worms, snails, it could be roots of the marshy plants, etc. We can see how beautifully it is balancing itself on the leaves while walking. It is interesting to see how it walks slowly, as if it is very thoughtful while walking, and you see how its tail is moving upwards every time while it's walking. These are the pond herons. They can be easily recognized by their dagger-like bill and long yellow legs. They are carnivores. They mainly eat fish, but their diet also includes frogs, small mammals, could be birds, reptiles, and insects. See how beautifully it is enjoying a ride of slow submersion into the water, and just in time, it changes the leaf. You can see how its plumage has grown beautifully to attract the female. Don't they look like some celebrity that walks on a red carpet, except that the carpet here is green. And our naturalists are no less than some paparazzi. Amongst the ducks, we have the resident species, and that is the spot-billed duck. We have recorded the spot-billed duck throughout the year. In this footage, we can see how the chicks are learning about the habitat, following the mother's instructions. Not even a single thing is missed in this training program. What I like them about the most is the scaly pattern of feathers on their body and a green patch that can be seen on their wings, which looks absolutely beautiful when they open their wings. Otherwise, also, that small diamond-like patch bordered by white looks so beautiful on their brown body, as if a stone is turned in a piece of a royal ornament. We have a special guest that visits us once a year, that is the little Grebe, who comes out specifically during the monsoon when the water level is high and there is more vegetation in canopy and a hiding area for them to make their nest and lay eggs. They usually live here until the winter, until their babies grow up. Here we see a juvenile Grebe, and in the background you see a male Grebe. As you can see, that distinctive rufous mark on the neck that tells that it's an adult, and they have a special plumage only in the mating season. After that, they become a standard gray-brown in color. Ponds play such an important role in breeding an ecosystem which is much more diverse than any other freshwater water body. We are obliged to be hosting this ecosystem and contribute in the conservation of biodiversity. We are extremely happy living around this kind of ecosystem where they do not disturb us and we do not disturb them. This is the habitat, and this is me, Rishabh, signing off. Please be safe. Take care. Bye.